I hope so.
The radio.
Oh,
Actually, right. My iPod.
but I don't know how to do that.
The League of Women Voters welcomes you to tonight's in-person and Zoom candidate forum for the Columbia School Board and ballot issues. I'm Barbara Hoppy, President of the League of Women Voters, and I will be your moderator for tonight. I wanted to thank Lauren Williams and the Columbia Public Library for co-sponsoring this event, and thank KFRU and KOPN for recording this event today. I also want to thank League of Women Voter Board Member Carol Schreiber, who has put this program together. Now, the first part of our evening's forum will include candidates for the Columbia School Board. The school board has 7 members. Board members serve 3 years, and they are not paid. Columbia Public Schools has over 18,500 students with 4 high schools, 6 middle schools, 21 elementary schools, and a career center. Tonight, we have 4 candidates for 2 seats on the school board. The candidates are Suzette Waters, Blake Willoughby, Andrea Lisenby, and Adam Burke. And voters can only vote for 2 candidates. The school board candidates will each have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we will have questions. We have note cards for questions from the in-person audience, and people on Zoom can enter questions in chat, and we will have those questions brought up to me to read. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And we have a league member, Marilyn McLeod, who is also the state president of the League of Women Voters. And she will hold up a sign when you have 30 seconds left and when you run out of time. Following the questions, the candidates will have 1 minute for closing statements. And then right now, opening statements will be presented in ballot order. So for the first opening statement, we'll hear from Suzette Waters.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this forum. I'm excited to hear the questions from the community tonight. My name is Suzette Waters. I grew up here and I went to these schools. My husband, Andy, and I have 2 kids. One a recent graduate of CPS and one a current sophomore at Hickman. They've been at CPS the whole time. I'm a dental hygienist. That's my day job. I've worked at the same office part-time for 22 years. The last 13 of those years, my major side hustle has been volunteering at my kids' schools. That has brought me a lot of joy and it has brought me a lot of great experience. I've volunteered in the classroom, I've tutored, I started an advocacy group for high achieving secondary students, and I've served on many PTA boards, most recently as the treasurer for the Hickman PTSA, where I prepared monthly financial statements and did all of the wonderful treasurer things. I am running for school board because I believe in public school. I believe specifically in CPS and our public schools. I know they are essential to the thriving community that we have. And I know that public school is the only viable way we are going to educate all of our children. It is important to me to see students achieve. I believe every student has greatness within them and all students can achieve no matter at what level, they can all make some progress. I believe in supporting our teachers. The teachers are kind of the linchpin of this whole machine. They're what's holding it together. We can have great buildings and students ready to learn, but if we don't have good teachers, we're not going to make education happen. So supporting our teachers is a giant priority of mine. And I would also like to add that one of my goals is to connect with the community in even greater ways. Our community partners are essential for our schools to thrive. They provide a lot of services for our students. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Blake Willoughby. I am running for re-election for the Columbia Public School Board. I was first elected in April of 2019. 8 months into that service, the world around us changed drastically. My apologies. Should I restart or did it pick up fine? All right, that's cool. So as I said, served for about 8 months in that first term, and then the world kind of changed around us with COVID and everything, and it really pushed us as a board to work in selfless service and have a lot of courage to make really difficult decisions with as best of information we had in that moment with the changing situation. Now we are in a situation to where we've had a lot of transitions happen. We have a new superintendent, we have a lot of new principals. We are a very young board. Right before I first joined the board, there was around 48 years of collective board service. Currently, there's only 23, and 11 of those are held by President Wade. And so by running for re-election, I am sitting here offering an opportunity for continued continuity of leadership and that historical and institutional knowledge as we are dealing in this time of transition and really needing to address major issues. And those issues being around student academics, making sure that we have a healthy work environment that's going to attract and retain teachers and staff. And then beyond just that, continuing to work with our community to get past many of the tension points that we have had over the last 2 years and offering a space of leadership that will look at bringing us all together as one community to support our kids and to support our teachers. So I look forward to talking about the issues tonight with all of y'all and answering questions.
Go ahead, Andrea Lisenby.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Lisenby, and I'm running for the Columbia School Board. My husband Kyle and I moved to Columbia 14 years ago. We built our business here, Plaza Dental Group, and we're raising our family. We have 3 kids, a 6th grader, a 4th grader, and a kindergartner. I have a background in microbiology, the degree in microbiology, and a minor in chemistry. I currently serve on several different PTAs, and I volunteer inside my children's classrooms. One thing that makes me unique from other candidates is I have a child with special needs. She attends CPS in a district classroom, and it has changed my perspective on the world. I have a compassion and an understanding and a firsthand knowledge that students come to CPS with a wide variety of abilities. CPS serves families with all different kinds of experiences. I've made it my mission these past 3 months to listen and learn from parents, students, teachers, principals, administration, and the community. I believe in a strong and vibrant public education system. Our district needs leaders who will ask tough questions, make difficult decisions, and hold themselves accountable. We need board members who are out in the community advocating for CPS and building relationships with our community partners. This is how I want to serve my community. I want to work really hard for our school district, and that's why I'm running for Columbia School Board.
Thank you, Ms. Lisenby. And now we'll hear from Adam Burks.
Good evening. My name is Adam Burks, and my wife and I, Melody, have 4 students that attend CPS. All 4 of our students have attended CPS since kindergarten, and today we have 2 in middle school and 2 in elementary. I was born and raised here in Boone County, and I'm a proud product of our Central Missouri public education system. I graduated Harrisburg High School using our dual credit program, attending Moberly Area Community College, and completing my first year and a half of college before graduating high school. After that, I went to Columbia College, where I obtained my bachelor's degree in business administration, and then shortly thereafter, I obtained my master's from William Woods University. Today, I currently serve as a volunteer firefighter and station manager captain with the Boone County Fire Protection District. I've been with that organization for the past 20 years, and I truly enjoy serving my community through that partnership that I've created with them. I work for Midway USA as the safety and facilities manager, and I oversee all of our campuses that we have here in Central Missouri. I also am responsible for our safety and health programs, including our COVID-19 mitigation response plans. I am running for school board because I'm a concerned parent and active member of my community that believes that the Columbia Public Schools must do better. My wife Melody and I are very involved parents in our in all of our children's education, and we believe that CPS has great quality teachers. We believe, both my wife and I, that we need strong leaders as our school board to help make those difficult decisions to make sure that we're always putting our students first, always. My primary goal as a Columbia Public School board member, if elected, is that every decision that I make, my first question to myself is this for the students? I want to make sure that we have quality teachers and that we have an amazing and outstanding recruitment and retention program to keep the amazing educators that we have today. And lastly, parents are going to make the difference. None of this will be possible if we don't get parent involvement back into our community and regain that trust and support that we have, that our community used to have for the board. My name is Adam Burks and I'm running for Columbia School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. We will now have questions for the candidates, and we will rotate who gets the question first. As moderator for the league, I will ask the first question, and then we will get questions from the audience via the cards they're filling out and from the Zoom viewers. And you'll have 1 minute each to answer the question, and then we'll rotate so everyone begins differently. We'll have a new first person. So the first question is, what role should the school board play in deciding what materials are allowed and what subjects or issues can be taught and discussed in the CPS classrooms? And, oh, yes, and Suzette Waters starts.
I think the board's role in determining curriculum should be very minimal. Those are decisions best made by educators. They're the ones with the training to do that. Right now that we have district coordinators, and they meet with teams of teachers and administrators to develop curriculum. The learning standards come down from the state. I mean, there's really no area for a board member to direct curriculum at all. So I think there's a process in place for that doesn't include the board, and that is fine.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. And then we'll go to Blake Willoughby to answer the question.
Yeah, so as Ms. Waters shared, the state standards come down from the state and it offers guidance for us as a school district. The school board is given that authority to vote on curriculum and make decisions that guide us through that. But part of that kind of conversation and that guidance comes from the fact that we work with our professionals that are hired within the district to give those recommendations of the best curriculum for our students, because they are the professionals that knows what's going to help our kids. I've been through this process as we were choosing a new kind of reading curriculum to overlay a lot of things. Our professionals piloted 2 different programs in a couple of our classrooms and grade levels at the K-5 level. Then they presented that information to us. They showed that benchmarks had better performance results for the students overall and all demographics. And so the board, after that recommendation from them and with that information, made a decision to move forward with benchmarks for reading. So that's just one outlay of how that operates, and it's through that recommendation and conversation with professionals in the district.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And now Andrea Lisbonby. I don't know why I have trouble with that. Well, answer the question.
Okay, thank you. One of our district goals is student success. And we, as the other 2 mentioned, we have Missouri state standards for our curriculum that we need to follow. I think it's important that as a school board, we have open and honest conversations with our superintendent, with our administrators, with all the experts in the areas of developing our curriculum. And I think we need to trust our educators and trust our administrators to determine age-appropriate curriculum that meets our state standards.
Thank you, Ms. Lisbonby. And now we'll go to Adam Burks.
Like most of the candidates up here have said, the role of the school board is really to be one of the final pieces of that puzzle. We have great educators. We have people that are in those roles that are going to be able to develop the curriculum, vet the curriculum, and put that through the chain of approval. Columbia Public Schools has a great process for creating curriculum, starting at the teacher, working all the way up through the administrative level. Where the board member is going to come in is making sure that we set the direction and making sure that the mission and the vision of the school is being achieved. The third part is budgeting, making sure that we have a budget that supports the educating goals and the vision of the school. The school board will then tell the should be telling the superintendent, here are your goals and visions. We want you to go out and make this possible. Again, I don't believe it's the school board member to specifically say we're going to teach this or we're not going to teach that. That is not our role. Our role is to be more of a higher level of giving guidelines and those goals that we need to get.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we'll take a second question from the audience or from the Zoom audience. And we'll start with Blake Willoughby first. And the question is, you said, this is to everyone, you are a parent. What are other qualities do you think one should have to be an effective community representative?
Just to clarify, just the question real quick, it says beyond being a parent, what are other reasons to be in the board or being an effective community member?
Let's see, what other qualities do you think one should have to be effective, to be an effective community representative, other than being a parent?
I got you. Well, I can uniquely talk about that. I am not a parent of a child here in Columbia Public Schools. I have served for the last 3 years in this capacity on the board. Before serving on the board, I was the vice chair of the city's Substance Abuse Advisory Commission. I also served on our Public Transit Advisory Commission, and currently I serve on the city's Community and Housing Development Commission. And so it's these experiences on boards and being deeply engaged in our community that add that quality to it. And it does having a deep understanding of how boards make decisions, how boards and groups of people work together with a variety of perspectives to come to a single decision is truly deeply important for this type of work and to be a good community leader. I also believe that it takes that time to really engage with our community. And that's a part of why I'm really proud that I'm one of the few board members that can claim that I've spent over 50+ hours in open community forums to discuss topics and issues, and other times before board meetings to talk about agenda items. So those qualities.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby, and now we'll go to Andrea Lisman.
Repeat the question.
Give it away. You said you are a parent. What other qualities do you think one should have to be an effective community representative? I assume school board representative.
It's important that school board members have a passion for public education, which I do, and a willingness to serve, which I do. I have been on the board of directors for Girls on the Run for several years. I served as our fundraising chair, and that gave me firsthand experience with many of our different schools. Over the past several months, I have made it my mission to be inside our school buildings, meeting with teachers, parents, principals, community members, listening and learning. We don't come to the school board knowing everything. It's important that we're able to, thank you, listen and learn and admit where we have shortcomings and just be willing to have honest conversations about where we stand as a district. I also think it's extremely important to have good communication skills. Transparency is critical for building trust with the community. I think that's an area that we can grow in as a school district.
Thank you, Ms. Lisenby. And now Adam Burks.
The additional qualities that I think would make a great school board candidate are not only being an advocate for the students, but also having a passion for serving our community. This position is not paid. We're not doing this for the glory. We're doing it for the betterment of our children. We're doing it for the betterment of our community. And I think you need to have somebody that has that passion, that has had that experience in serving our community to be able to know the expectations of what it needs to take to make that role successful. I think it also needs to be somebody who has a passion for education, passion for our public school system. Leadership and direction is a true quality that needs to be as a board member, because they're going to have the difficult conversations and they're going to have to make the difficult decisions that have to represent all students, not just select groups. And then finally, it's communication. You have to be a great communicator to be a school board member. The school board reports to the community, and the community reports back to the school board for us to give feedback and direction back to the superintendent. So communication would be like one of my star key points.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we'll go to Suzette Waters.
I think beyond being a parent of children, I've shown a lot of volunteerism, which I think is important. I think volunteering has made me aware of lots of different types of people. It's given me exposure in a lot of different areas. And it has proven, I've proven over time that I am going to be a person that shows up for kids. And I think that makes me a great candidate for school board because it's about showing up and doing what's best for kids. I think my personality suits me to being a board member because I'm pretty flexible about different opinions. I think I'm a good listener. I have a fair sense of humor, I think, which I think is necessary when you're dealing with the community at large. And I feel like I'm a person that wants to be available to solve problems.
Thank you. And now we'll go to another question from the audience or Zoom. And this time we'll start with Andrea Lisenby. And the question is, a battle teacher spoke at a recent board meeting about promises being broken and struggles that our schools number of 170 are facing? No. Oh, north, okay. No, oh, north of I-70, I get it now. North of I-70 are facing. How do the candidates think it is best to solve the issues facing these schools, such as reduced free lunches and other things? And then this is Andrea goes first.
Okay, I'm gonna try and remember where that question started.
Oh, a battle teacher spoke at a recent board meeting about promises being broken and struggles that our schools north of I-70 are facing. How do the candidates think it is best to solve the issues facing these schools?
I went to Battle Elementary today and I went to Battle High School a couple days ago. And so I've been learning quite a bit about this. I live south of town and I'm not as familiar with the schools north of town. And so I've made it a priority to learn. One size fits all solutions don't work in Columbia. We have a very large school district. It's the 5th largest school district in the state of Missouri. And I think it's important that we make decisions. Guiding principles can be district-wide, but allocating resources oftentimes needs to be individualized for each different school. And it's important to work with the people at the school who are on the ground level and know their needs before making decisions. The needs of our north of I-70, as the question asked, oftentimes are different than, maybe not greater than or less than, but just very different than the needs of other schools in our district.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Adam Burke.
Yes, this actually came up last night at the school board meeting, and since that has come up, I've tried to do a little bit of research to determine where we have some shortfalls and some of the communication or some of the promises that have or have not been made. It gets down to communication and it gets down to the trusting of our educators. It is extremely important that our educators feel like they can talk to their administrators and that the administrators can talk to the district staff. And if we have teachers that have to come to a school board meeting to voice these concerns, then I go back to one of the core things that I think a school board member needs is communication. Do we have a communication breakdown? Do we have a process breakdown? Do we have a bigger issue at hand? And that's kind of where I started with this issue is, where did those promises come from? Where were these decisions made? And where did we fail our students? Or did we even fail? Has there been things that have changed that we haven't went back and revised our programs or our policies?
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we'll go to Suzette Waters.
So I went to the Battle PTO meeting in January and I spoke with some parents at Battle. I spoke with several teachers and administrators at Battle. I've talked with the principal and I've heard from those parents. And I think those concerns are real. I've also visited several title buildings north of I-70 in the past couple months, and those struggles are real. There is a different population of students at our title schools and that presents a different kind of challenge than we have at other buildings. And until we say that out loud, we are going to continue to have an achievement gap. Where there is greater need, there need to be greater resources. That's what equity means. And I think it's important to not just divert resources based on numbers, but on need. So if we have 200 students that need help at one school versus 200 students at another, if or versus 10 at another, then, we need to send more resources to the schools that need that help.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. And now we'll hear from Blake Willoughby.
We're gonna try and have the mic, no, it's not working. All right, cool. Good evening. When it comes to this specific topic, as Ms. Waters has shared, as both Ms. Lillaby and Mr. Brooks have shared, this is something that is real in north of I-70. This is something that our teachers and our counselors and our staff have been sharing. And it's something that we continue to work on as a district. When Battle High School got built, this was an understanding. When we had boundary changes that happened a couple years ago, right before I joined the board, that was understood. And so through our budgeting process, which is our buildings submit proposals of what they are wanting to have, what they're needing, we then as a district, they look over the entire proposals that are coming from all the buildings to allocate where we have additional resources to give the best that we can. And so some years that might not mean Battle got something because we saw a greater need at an elementary school, and that's where that FTE got applied for 1 year. And that's just a hypothetical example, as I'm just kind of sharing how this operates and looks. So it is something important, and we continue working to get better.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. Now we have another question from the audience, and this time we'll start with Adam Burks. So the question is, what are your views on the constitutional issue of state-church separation in at the public schools? Please provide examples of activities you believe should or should not be allowed in this regard.
Does she have a specific example that she's wanting me to give?
No, just what are your views on the constitutional issue of state versus church, state and church separation in and at public schools? And then please provide examples of activities you believe should or should not be allowed in this regard.
Well, let me do some thinking here real quick. I guess I'm a little confused of, do we have an example of something that's occurring in the school, which I would not condone? We have to make sure that as a school board, that we're making sure that we have a school district that is ethical, following state and federal guidelines. When it comes to church, the separation of church and state, I think that comes down to what's happening at the school level. Did the school board give the right direction to the superintendent for the superintendent to deploy to his administrators? If we have administrators that are not following that guidance or those directions or those goals or measures, then I would have an issue as a school board member.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burks. And then the next person will be Suzette Waters.
I think we do a good job of providing separation between church and state. That's a hard, fast rule that we need to follow. There are some ways that we look at that where there is not really gray area, but for example, school prayer, hard no, we can't do that. That's conflating church and state. But we have, for example, an extracurricular club called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That's okay. It's, we have that. We have clubs that align with different interests and religions, and that's fine. That's an acceptable mixture of academics and religion, because it's not something that's like requiring school prayer.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Blake Willoughby.
Yeah, I think Mr. Brooks and Ms. Waters have shared it very well for us. We really do have a good system here at the Columbia Public Schools of how we create these divisions, but we do have student groups that are religious based. I grew up with them as well. I don't think that there is a problem for extracurricular students if they want to take part in a club and form a club in those ways that have to occur activities before and after school. That's not being condoned by the school district, but it's giving that space for students to congregate and work together around a topic or an identity base that they have. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I will also say that we have teachers who teach religious courses, and they do a really good job of making sure that they're hitting on a variety of religions and also really towing that line when they have guest speakers, because there have been moments where teachers have had to step in and tell guest speakers or a pastor and saying, hey, it's going past information now. We're getting into persuasion. And so that's really hard. And the fact that our teachers are willing to bring guest speakers and be in that gray area and be in that difficult space to say that, I think that's really courageous for us and allows us to have really good dialogue.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Andrea Lisenby.
I'm struggling with this question a little bit because I don't know that we have any major challenges at CPS. I'm not sure what the person asking the question is getting at, but I think that we do a great job of following the laws at CPS where we don't violate the separation between church and state. And we also do a great job of allowing extracurricular activities, clubs, as was mentioned, Fellowship of Christian Athletes is one, where we do allow students to have some type of a religious activity on the school property. Our curriculum is vetted very well. I don't think that we cross any boundaries.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to another question. And this time we'll start with Suzette Waters. And the question is, please speak to the rates at which children of color are referred to juvenile, I think, authorities by schools in the district.
I know that historically, Black and brown students have been disciplined at a higher rate than our white students. That is a concerning trend. It's important that we keep accurate data on all of the interactions that we have with our students, both between the SROs, the security resource officers, and students, and as well as administration, and we do have that data on what students have been suspended, for example, for what reasons, at what age, how many times, we know all of that. We have equity and bias training also. We actively train, CPS actively trains its teachers to recognize their own biases and to work toward restorative practices, and in cases where that will be a good substitute for an expulsion or a suspension. So I think we keep doing the work. We keep going.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Now we'll go to Blake Willoughby.
No, yeah, this is an issue right as I got on the board back in April of 2019, as we were working on a vision for what the next year was going to look like with Dr. Peter Siepelman when he was here as superintendent. This was one of the topics that we talked about, and one of the topics that we were seeing where our trends were at, and really talking about how our discipline matrix that we were working on to really bring about discipline that's not going to be referring students constantly to ISS and OSS, not constantly bringing in the police to be a part of it, but really working to build a strong relationship between the teacher and the student, as well as when those moments do need to recur, where a student might need to go to the principal because it's reached a point to where the teacher has tried the multiple strategies that are there, that there is a continued development relationship between the principal or vice principal with the student before ever that interaction occurred. And so beyond just that, addressing this issue really does come into responding to the impacts that COVID has had with mental health and counselors. And that's why we've been having so many partnerships with outside entities, with the university and rural health, to bring in these services to help our students.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. Now Andrea Lisenby will speak.
It's essential that we ensure that our discipline policies are enforced consistently across all buildings, across students of all backgrounds, not singling out any one group in particular. And as Mr. Willoughby said, I will rephrase, I think we need to come up with some creative solutions. Post-pandemic, we're seeing new challenges and more challenges. And I would like to see us have a sense of urgency of getting some solutions into our classrooms.
Thank you, Ms. Lisenby. And now Adam Burks.
Yes, I'm a very fact-based decision maker. And I think when I hear about the numbers of the discipline and the ISS, the OSS, I would like to drill into those numbers a little bit more as a school board member. We need to really start focusing on where some of these root causes of the issues are. And all three have, the board candidates up here have mentioned on that is, why are we getting to the solution where we're at? If that is our first solution, then we have something that's broken down. Where are those issues that we can prevent that child from becoming to that part of the discipline matrix? I I think we need to be looking at the population of the school. What is the population? Are we looking at what is the ratio of students? What is the ratio of free and reduced lunch? Where, what type of behavior is occurring? Has this been occurring frequently in the past? And then helping try to redirect some of those resources that we've talked about with our community partners. I can tell you from the fire and EMS side, we are seeing a lot of mental health issues that are causing disruption in the classroom. And so really, OSS and ISS is not the appropriate approach in those situations.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Blake Willoughby, and I'm gonna jump back to a lead question. What role should our schools play in helping students learn how to distinguish factual information from misinformation and disinformation?
I enjoy this question, not because we're dealing with this issue across the nation, but I enjoy it because it really gets into a huge thing that's a lot newer, which is, web literacy and internet literacy and students being able to be critically thinking and look at where is this information coming from and verifying it. As a student who is what I call, as an individual who I was a guinea pig for Facebook, because I got a first Facebook page when I was in 9th grade back in 2009. So, it was pumping out at that point. And so, there's so much disinformation that's out there. And so really working with our kids to see how to verify information, where to go after if they see something. Here's a way to go to a source that might help you find like secondary supports to what you read there. And beyond just that, it's also working with them to be critically thinking and critically engaged citizens in the country. And as they're reading material in class, thinking beyond just what they're reading there and what they've learned in other classes to apply it.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And now Andrea Litzenby will speak to the issue.
This is something that CPS does very well. Our teachers are very good at teaching our students critical thinking. I love the way they present different ideas in the classroom and teach students how to step back and think through things. As we said, critical thinking skills. Our high schools offer such a wide variety of classes. It's just something that we should be really proud of as a district, and our Career Center even offers additional classes. We can take university classes as high school students. And this is something to be celebrated. We do a great job.
Thank you. Lizenby. Now we'll go to Adam Burks.
Just like Andrea and Blake have touched on, it gets into teaching students how to critically think, how to think about the situation that they've been proposed with. From there, being able to take that information, digest the information, and find out what is factual and not factual, how to validate that information. I've been very lucky of spending a lot of time with my 14-year-old of how to write a research paper and where the appropriate place to get the information is. Just because it's on the internet does not mean it's true. One area I would like to see us to improve in this area is social media. Just because it's on Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and TikTok doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. So I think we've done a really, really good job at the critical thinking and the validating piece. Now I would like to see CPS maybe help us figure out a way that we could tackle the social media giant that does help spread a lot of misinformation.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we'll hear from Suzette Waters.
I know we have a media center curriculum that specifically addresses this. There are lessons designed where there's a lot of information presented and the students are to rank the most reliable information to the least reliable information. And then the source of the information is revealed, and it's pretty, and then they get to re-rank it. So like, for example, this is the best mattress ever made, and this mattress is whatever. And then it turns out, oh, well, one of these is from a sleep study and one of these is from Mattress Firm. So students get to see what it takes to critically assess a source. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about assessing the credibility of sources. I actually think we could use some adult continuing education classes in that subject.
Thank you. So we'll go on to question number 7. I think we have enough time for that before closing statements. And this will go to Andrea Lizenbeek first. And the question is, what is your view on mental wellness programs in the school?
This is a topic I'm super passionate about. evaluating and treating the mental health of our students. This pandemic has done quite a number on all of us, and our students don't necessarily have the words to articulate how they're feeling. They don't, with kids, their emotions flood their brain. It's neuroscience, and they're unable to learn when their brain is flooded with emotions. And so if we can help our students rein in their emotions and coach them through just practical ways to conduct themselves in a classroom so that they're able to learn, I would love to see us provide this service. It's something that we can work with our community partners with. We talked about Borough Health. I know they're doing a pilot study with CPS at the moment to be on site to help our students in their moment of need. And again, this is something that is urgent. I don't want to see us wait too long to serve our children in this way.
Thank you, Andrea Lisenby. And now we'll hear from Adam Burks.
Yes, I'm gonna reiterate what a lot of Andrea said. We have a serious issue on our hands here, not only as a school board member, but as parents. I've got 4 kids that are in CPS, and we have created an environment where we are teaching our kids to be on a tablet 8 hours a day, and that is not okay. As a parent, we really struggle at our house of making sure that we have limited screen time and really trying to focus that not everything is technology. And that has created a lot of mental health issues in our household, and then what I'm seeing nationwide, even in articles that we're reading from the police and the fire side. I think we need to be working with our community partners, behavioral health, the university, those things, and we need to find some additional ways to start pulling back away from the electronic devices. I've known a personal experience with a very close friend that ended up taking their kid out of CPS because it was causing disruptions in the household with the electronic devices from a mental health standpoint. So,
Thank you, Mr. Burks. Now we'll hear from Suzette Waters.
So the child mental health tax was passed several years ago, and that funds a program through Boone County Children's Services called there's a screening that is covered for all students K through 12. They take a social emotional screening twice a year. And that provides us with data so that we know what kind of interventions are needed. It's not a diagnosis, but it gives us a picture of how many students are experiencing depression, how many students wake up feeling sad, how many students feel overwhelmed, and those kinds of things. And that informs the district on what services are needed. Where do we need more trauma counselors? Where do we need more outreach counselors? And then they can refer to any teacher or parent or coworker can refer a student for free mental health services through Family Access Center of Excellence and other places.
Thank you, Suzette Waters. And now we will hear from Blake Willoughby.
This topic is really personal to me as someone who has dealt with mental health issues, especially back in undergrad when I was a little bit younger. And so, I mean, this is something to where with our kids, it's so important to have access to resources. And we're a resource-rich community. It's about connecting and getting them, whether it's into the schools as we're working with Burrell, or if it's continuing to grow those partnerships that we have with Columbia College, with the University of Missouri, with Stevens, with, I'm blanking on a college name. I'm so sorry. Central Methodist, there we go. And all of those partners that we bring in to work with our kids and help them in this area. But part of it too is like supporting and bolstering the things that we already do. And so we have social emotional learning and really invigorating that and supporting our teachers as they're working with our students in those ways to help them on the preemptive side, right? If they know how to kind of work to regulate their emotions and giving them that learning space, we're getting to it before it becomes a major issue.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to get in 2 more questions before final statements and end at 7:30 because I have more questions than we have time for. We'll switch to a little different subject that came from the audience. What is your position on Proposition 1 for both Columbia and Boone County? I assume that's the user tax. And I'm sorry. And Adam Burks goes first. Oh, yes, Adam.
So I believe Proposition 1 tax is a sales tax for online sales. Is that correct? Okay. And so from what I understand is that doesn't have any impact on the Columbia Public School budget. That is going straight to general revenue funds for the city and then straight to general revenue funds for the county. So unless the school district goes back to the city to ask for additional funding, unfortunately, I don't know what role the Columbia Public School Board member is going to have in that.
Thank you. And now Suzette Waters.
Yeah, I've always heard it called the Wayfair tax, which I think it's fair. I'm in favor of it. I think I don't think it helps small business owners to have to compete with online retailers. And so in that sense, I'm for it because I want to support our local business owners. And I think, a thriving business here does generate more tax revenue for our schools. So, if it levels the playing field and causes us to have more local sales, then that can only help schools.
Thank you, Suzette Waters. Now we will hear from Blake Willoughby.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting proposal for our city to really think about and for citizens to decide if they're going to support or not support. I think one of the things that would be very nice to see it do is to help us on a larger scale for the city when it comes to homelessness, when it does come to mental health, as well as really looking at how do we continue to bolster and grow our programming that we have for students to have some internships and also kind of paid positions during the summer and giving these opportunities to grow and develop their career workforce and their experience in doing various different positions before they go off and graduate from us. And so I am optimistic on what it could provide. But I do think that to make a decision is really based off the citizens to decide if they're wanting to support it or not.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And now we will hear from Andrea Lisenby.
As a small business owner, I understand the impact that, shopping on Amazon has on our local businesses. And so it's an important issue for our citizens to consider. I don't see it directly impacting the Columbia School Board.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. So we'll go back to starting with Suzette Waters. This will be our 9th question. What is your, and I think it's pertinent question to ask, and it was from the audience. What is your position, Ari, the expenditure of uniformed police in schools instead of more trauma-informed counselors and homeschool communicators getting to the root of student behavior?
Well, I do not think the school resource officers are meant to correct behavior. They're not there for behavior. They're there to be mentors. They're there to be available as almost first responders. They can use their technology to call for emergency services much faster than the principal running back to the office and calling on the phone. So as long as the school resource officers are operating as mentors, then that's what they are there to do. I also think we need more trauma counselors and we need more homeschool communicators, especially in some of our title buildings or buildings where there is a greater need. Going back to an earlier question about schools north of I-70, if there is a greater need among a school population for those services, then that's where they should go. But school resource officers are not put there to deal with mental health issues.
And now, thank you, Ms. Waters. Now we'll go to Blake Willoughby.
No, yeah, I would agree with what Ms. Waters has shared. I also think what didn't get a lot of newsworthy note, but even before we went and approved the SRO contract as a school board, and then it went on to city council, is that we approved MOUs to bring in counselors and mental health providers into the district with student interns working at the University of Missouri, working at Columbia College. Those were renewals that we did. We did approve the Burrell MOU to bring in this pilot program at Battle High School. And so those didn't get the same newsworthy things, and those are addressing what this question is asking, correct? And are those alternatives that we're looking at. And so it's not that the board is choosing just SROs, we're choosing a multitude of avenues to address it. I also have to say, knowing my colleagues on the board and who sits on the board today, I don't know of a better board to really analyze and assess an SRO contract and really give it the scrutiny that it deserves to see, is it doing what we want it to do, or is it creating more harm than what we were expecting?
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And now we're heard from Andrea Lisenby.
The board, is this on?
think so.
How about this one? Okay. The 4 SROs that were approved is part of a larger plan for CPS. And I think it's excellent that we are meeting the needs of our students as well as providing teachers with some of the support that they have been asking for.
Thank you, Ms. Lisenby. Now we'll hear from Mr. Burks.
Yes, I completely agree with the agreement, and I would like to see this program grow even further. I am a result of a SRO program back in the early years. It used to be called DARE, for those that remember it. Made a huge impact on my life. And that police officer actually was a deputy sheriff that was put into that school. Their job was not to be a law enforcement officer. Their job was to be a mentor. Their job was to provide guidance, direction, and help give people resources that they may not have at home. And so that's what I see the school resource officer program doing here at Columbia Public Schools. If you ever want to know really what a school resource officer does, you have to be specially picked. You have to go to specialized training. And it is, yes, it's a police officer job. You're putting on that uniform. But I could tell you as a previous police officer, it's more than that. It's somebody who is passionate about students, is passionate about education, and is passionate about being there for somebody that may not have that at home. They also help pick up on some early warning signs that may protect a child in maybe some type of dangerous situation.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. I'm going to try to get in one more question because you guys are very good and concise at answering. And this question will go first to Mr. Willoughby. And the question is, would you support open sessions for the board to interact with parents and grandparents?
That's a very interesting thing on open session, just due to the fact that if once you have a quorum of 4, it has to be publicly posted, it has to have good notice, there has to be an agenda. It doesn't mean that something has to be voted on and discussed. There actually is conversations already between board members in talking about, is there a way of looking at how we take in feedback a little bit differently? There's a draft policy that I had given right before COVID started to our policy chair at the time, Dr. Street Wilhoit, and Superintendent Dr. Stiepelman, and just kind of looking at, is there a way to look at engaging with our public and getting some public comment that isn't just at a board meeting, but in a different kind of avenue at each of our buildings in a variety of rotating ways. But COVID hit, and so that kind of paused any of that conversation around that policy just due to the fact that we were needing to address something that was a lot bigger and so much more than what we were ever expecting it to be. So.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. Now we'll hear from Andrea Lisenby. I guess it's those Willoughbys and Lisenbys.
I do think we need to look at more ways for the school board to interact with the community. It needs to be, in my opinion, a little more back and forth. Someone sending off a very lengthy email and expecting a response via email isn't always the best way to communicate. Same with, your 3 minutes of public comment at a board meeting isn't always the best way to deliver the message you want. I know that we used to have a parent community university, and that was open to parents, students, teachers, community members to have open discussions and conversations about lots of different topics. I would love to see that come back. Also, I'm in full support of the idea of having board members assigned to a handful of different schools so that every school has at least one board member who is attending their PTA meetings, coming to their fundraisers, interacting with their community on more intimate level, and just finding more and more creative solutions for ways to engage with the community in productive ways. And
thank you, Ms. Lisenby. Now we will hear from Adam Burks.
Okay. Yes, I do support some type of process where it's kind of a combination of what everybody's had said so far is we need to be able to have school board members that have open lines of communication with our community. At the end of the day, the school board is elected by our peers. They're elected by the community members. And we need to be there so that they could feel like they could have a voice in the decisions that are getting made. Today, as a parent, I don't feel like my school board members give me that opportunity to have that comment, to have that active feedback back and forth, unless we are specifically reaching out, trying to schedule a meeting between the hours of 8 and 5. We live in a world that doesn't operate between 8 and 5 anymore. We have single parents, we have parents working multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet. We have to be more flexible, and we need to figure out a way to make this work for our community. At the end of the day, If the school board is not serving the students or the community, then I think that we are failing. And that's what we probably need to go back and repair. We need that community support. We need that community engagement. I wholly agree about the laws about 4 people, but I think maybe the individual people assigned to stick to schools would give a better opportunity for that.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we will hear from Suzette Waters.
Well, if the community wants open sessions and that's what the board decides to do, then I will show up for those. I don't think that's going to be as satisfying as what people would like, because I think it's going to be too structured. And I think what people want is unstructured two-way dialogue. And I've been saying for a while that I would be happy to go to the buildings to which I'm assigned as a board member if I should get elected on a rotating basis, to go to a faculty and staff meeting and followed by a PTA meeting, because that is where you get feedback from people on the ground, parents who are involved, and you're able to have that two-way dialogue and just hear what do they want? What is their feedback? What do they see? And then I am perfectly willing to do office hours. I can have them on weeknight evenings, on weekend mornings, a combination of those. Maybe no one will ever show up, or maybe the same person will show up every single time, but at least, you know, I will be available.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. And now we will go to our 1-minute closing statements, and we're going to start in reverse ballot order. So Mr. Burks will go first.
Thank you for having us tonight. Again, my guiding principle in every decision that I want to make as a member of the Columbia Public School Board is simple. I want to put students first always. I will always remember that our quality teachers matter and that engaged parents are going to make the difference. Together, I believe that we can help make Columbia Public Schools one of the best education institutions in the state of Missouri. As a parent and a community member, it is truly important for me to make sure that I'm engaging with my community, and that was my primary goal. I am going to be there regardless of what time it is to make sure that I'm here helping the community and being a voice for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. And now we'll hear from Ms. Lisenby.
I will listen, learn, and lead. My plan is to be in every school every year. I will volunteer where needed. I will listen to teachers and principals. I will learn what tools, resources, and support they need to deliver quality education to every student. I will bring a much needed diversity of perspective to our Columbia School Board. As a parent of a child on an IEP and in a special education district classroom, I see firsthand the wide range of abilities and uniqueness of our Columbia population. I will advocate for each student, each family, each teacher, and our entire community. We need to work together, build a plan, and move forward. I am committed to public education and will work really hard for our school district. This is why I'm running for the Columbia School Board. Thank you for hosting us tonight. I ask you to please vote for Andrea Lisenby on April 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Willoughby, you may make your closing statement.
Thank you all for tonight. It's been great to answer some of these questions and just share more about my reelection and what I'm looking forward to continue doing. You know, as an educator, I help teach K-12 future educators. As a researcher, I research board governance and effective practices. I have had 3 years of service during some of the most difficult times, navigating, maneuvering, and changing, and being very fluid on what we had to do and meeting multiple times. I have served on all 3 of our major committees here in Columbia Public Schools, being finance, policy, and long range. And so truly, it really does look at talking about in this time when we have these major topics that we've talked about tonight that we want to address as board members, that continuity of leadership, that institutional knowledge, and that historical knowledge to know where we were, where we're at now, and where we're trying to go. We'll be creating a new CSIP that's going to be guiding us for the next 5 years. And that institutional knowledge is going to be very important to make sure that we're not just spinning our wheels, doing something we used to do, but moving forward truly.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And now Andrea Lisenby, no, Suzette Waters will give her closing statement.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this forum. I know it's a lot of work to put on a forum and reserve the space, and thank you to the community members who submitted questions. I have enjoyed really this whole campaign process. I have really enjoyed getting out in the community and talking with organizations, talking with wonderful people who are putting their heart and soul behind helping educate every child. I've met with marvelous teachers and administrators, and I have seen every day since December 8th that we have a community full of people who greatly desire to see children succeed. That is inspiring to me. And that is, in fact, why I am running for school board, because I believe in the greatness of every child. And I believe that our mission to educate them and let that greatness develop is the most important work we do. And I would like to volunteer my time to helping that happen.
Thank you so much to all the candidates for joining us tonight and sharing your views. And we wish you well. And now we will take a minute or two break and set up for the next session, which will be the ballot issues, the school ballot issue, and the Columbia and Boone County user issue. Welcome, everyone, again. And we will now hear from Dr. Brian Yearwood, who will talk about the school bond ballot issue, and then we'll take questions both from the audience and from the Zoom viewers on chat.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for having me this evening. Yes, we have on the ballot on April 5th will be our bond issue. And as we go through this presentation this evening, let's see. Murphy's Law, what it's gonna go wrong will happen. I'm experiencing that right now. Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Here we see scholars in action, those young scholars sitting vibrant, excited, learning from the teacher. But look around, look at the environment that our scholars are in. And our scholars thank you. Our scholars are actually learning in an environment because of a bond. The flooring, the environment, the comfortableness of, look at the walls, the short through projector, all of these things. The environment that's created here is because of our bond that our community has allowed us to produce a classroom environment that is very conducive to learning. Why are we asking our voters to approve a bond? As we look at our growth, back in 2010 to the left, we started at 17,550 scholars. As we look on the far right side, we are at 18,527 scholars. The year before that, in 2020, 2021, that was our pandemic year. That was the year that a lot of kindergartners were redshirted. Because of the pandemic, the virus was raging. A lot of kindergartners were at home. Prior to that, we were up to 19,000 and rising. So as we look at the fall, the dip from the pandemic, we are rising again. And we, in a projection in about 10 years' time, we will be way past that 19,000. We must provide a school environment that is not overcrowded. We must provide an environment that is conducive to learning. And the only way we can do that is ensuring that our spaces that we provide allow for us to have manageable classroom sizes. Very, very important. So currently, we have 39 buildings in Columbia Public Schools with 3 support facilities, over 3 million square feet of building space, and of course, 800 acres that must be maintained, because we want to ensure that our buildings, our environment is conducive to learning. It's well kept, it's clean, it's aesthetically pleasing, just like this room that we are in with the lovely decor and so on. We want to make sure that we provide those comforts for our scholars so they can focus on learning, the reading, the writing, the math, science and social studies, and fine arts and so on, music. So as we look at our schools, I have up here approximately 16 buildings, but you look at the age of them. These buildings are over 50 years old. We start with Rockbridge at 51, all the way up to Grant and Jefferson that are approximately 111 years old. When a building ages, it requires special maintenance. And we do have a lot of deferred, what you call deferred maintenance, because of the cost of actually keeping up with certain things. Now, our operations department has done extremely well in managing to make sure our buildings have good lighting, make sure that we have heating, air conditioning, and so on. But there's more that needs to be done to ensure that these buildings continue to serve our scholars in a comfortable fashion. So again, maintenance on these buildings is of high priority. As we look at past bond projects over the years, we've had many. And one thing that I went back and I did my research on, every bond project we delivered. When we asked the voters to approve a bond, whatever we asked for, we delivered. And not only did we deliver these projects on time and below cost. So again, we look at the renovations, the things that started on the top left at Alpha Heart, over there on the top left side in 2010, all the way, Battle Elementary School, Shepherd Boulevard, all of these additions and renovations that have taken place. And most recently, we see the addition at Rockbridge Elementary School in 2020. All of this could have only been possible because of our bond funds. In addition to that, our schools had trailers. We started with 173 trailers. We're now down to about 20. Trailers are not great environments for classrooms. They're typically at the back of the school. Scholars have to go through, if it's raining, if it's snowing, to get there. Trailers do not last. They become dilapidated very quickly. We have to replace these trailers with brick and mortar classrooms so they can last a long time. And in addition to that, or trailers, from time to time, you may find an occasional rodent because they can actually find ways in. We have to replace these with brick and mortar, and our goal is to have 0 trailers serving as a classroom in Columbia Public Schools. So again, we're down to 20 now in 2020. We're hoping to, we're down to less than 20 now, and we're hoping to get to 0. This is some of the bond work going on. Rockbridge Elementary School addition happening. Jefferson Middle School, if you drive by Jefferson, you'll see some of that construction occurring. They're also putting in an elevator in that site. And then, of course, the beautiful John Warner Middle School that was recently built. Our focus areas. And remember, as we look at our bonds, this is actually we do what's called a 10-year projection. So we look at our statistics, we work with our demographers, and we look at 10 years out. Because of that, we have come across the 3 major areas that bonds will be focusing on. The first one is our growth. We must continue to construct new buildings while maintaining existing buildings. One of the things you'll see later on is that we are proposing to have an elementary school built out of John Warner. Why? There's a housing development going out there with close to 500 homes. And we must be prepared for influx of scholars into that region. Safety and security, making sure that every school has a single entry point. So that way we can prevent any individuals who are not supposed to be in those schools from being there. The third point, and very, very important, accessibility. We have scholars that are disabled. We have parents that are disabled. We have environments that are not conducive to allowing our scholars and our parents to maneuver throughout the building. We must prepare for that. So making sure that, again, we improve our ADA requirements is of premium. This is what's being proposed. On April 5th, we're asking the board's permission to approve a $80 million bond. Half of it, if approved, we'll begin spending in June of 2022. That's at $40 million. The second half in June of 2024. And again, under 2022, we look at the elementary school at John Warner. We're asking for renovation of our career center because our career center has not been improved upon in probably close to 10 years or more. We must have programs in our career center that will allow our scholars who are not going to college to have an avenue to be productive in terms of acquiring certification, acquiring skills that will allow them to be productive citizens. And this is how it's broken down here in this order. So we go from 25 million down to 500,000. It's very, very important. One very important thing to know, bond funds can only be used for construction. On the right side, we cannot use bond funds to pay salaries or operating costs and require 50%, 57% majority needed to pass. Our tax levies that we do have can be used for salaries, utility costs, and general maintenance and so on. So again, this is the emphasis that we have. CPS is growing. We need a long-range plan. And by law, state does not fund construction or infrastructure. It must come from bond funds. This is a language that you'll see on the ballot. I'm not going to stop there with that. And just remember that the key date is April the 5th with no tax increase. The key is we will not be increasing taxes because of this $80 million bond. That's all I have for this evening. I'd like to see if there's time for any questions.
Right, sit there and then do a little different arrangement here. That's the idea. The first question is, With continued growth in Columbia, how soon do you expect to be back with another bond issue?
Not for a while. I think with this one, with the construction, with the things that we're going, we focus on 10-year spans. So again, this schools that we're building is based upon approximately 10-year projection. So every 10 years or so is when we start looking at what our numbers are looking like, what our growth will look like.
Okay, so we don't have any specific time frame, right?
Well, we can say a 10-year span.
About 10,
The bond is coming up this year. We started this about 5 or 6 years ago. This will take us into another 5 years. So it's about a 10-year span of time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then a question from the audience. What steps will be taken with new construction to use renewable energy to operate the building?
Absolutely. We are always trying to be energy efficient. So we will always utilize our studies especially with our architects that are very knowledgeable about green spaces, and we'll rely upon our professionals, the architects, to guide us along to ensure that our buildings are energy efficient, because everyone loves a low utility bill. I know I enjoy a low electricity bill as well.
Thank you. And I think that's all the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Oh, wait. Oh, there's a few more questions coming. I might ask you when, while we're waiting, is how do you determine where a school will be located? And how does that fit in with environmental concerns?
Yes, so we do what we call demographic studies. There's a professional company that works with providing us with demographic data. We look to see where our spaces are being utilized. We also look at accessibility, because obviously we want to make sure that our schools can be easily accessed. And of course, there's studies that our architects have to do to ensure that, again, the environment that they're actually building a school in is not one that is going to be disruptive to any sort of conservation efforts and things like that.
Thank you. Looks like we have a few more questions. Oh, great. Would you be able to upgrade ventilating systems with these funds?
Yes, that's a part of our funds would be used to help with ventilation, HVAC, and things like that. Absolutely, yes.
For
ma'am.
the old building?
For the older buildings, yes.
And how will inflation affect how much you can do with this bond?
Yes, so we do consider what is called escalation costs because of prices of materials and things like that. So as we look at our projections, it's a certain percentage that goes into that metric that looks at possible escalation costs of our building materials.
Okay, let me see. I've seen past projections that a new high school could be needed in Columbia within the next decade. If that is the case, where might it be located?
Good question. We have to do a study. Right now, as part of what we are, our plans are for the following year, is to do what is called a facility study, a facility space utilization study. Because we want to make sure that wherever we put a school, there's a great need for, not because of, just a haphazard decision. We must study it, we must get our research in, we must get our professionals that look at building utilizations and things like that. And based upon the data that we research and we receive, then we will be making a decision.
And I have a follow-up question to that. From Nick, myself,
Yes.
as a former city council person, how will you work with the city so that the city doesn't incur a lot of expense by extending roads and locating the building where it's economically good for the city?
Yes, we'll be working very closely with the city. As a matter of fact, we're encouraging monthly meetings with our city planners because we want to ensure, like I said earlier on, that the location of the building allows for easy access to where we're not having to do a lot of development with roads and things like that. So yes, we are working very, very closely with our city planners to make sure that, again, additional costs in that regard are not incurred.
And there's one more question that looks like,
Sure.
oh, actually, this is the question that already was asked. So we had a,
One that just came up on
how will inflation affect how you can, what you can do, how much you can do with this fund? I think we asked that already.
Yes, yes, escalation costs we do take into consideration. Sure.
Okay, does CPS use a bidding process for architects and contractors to provide services on new projects? Or are these professionals already in place?
No, we ask for proposals and they go through a very intense bidding process. As a matter of fact, it also now involves interviews for the companies so that we can not only see their proposals, but we can actually interview and talk with them about their companies and putting them through a true vetting process. So yes, it's a very, very robust bidding process. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much,
Sure.
Dr. Yearwood.
Yes, thank you.
And now we will hear from Janet Thompson, Boone County Commissioner regarding the Boone County use tax. Oh, we have to take a break. So we'll be right back with Janet Thompson and Matthew Liu on the user tax for the Columbia and the city. We will now hear from the Director of Finance from Columbia, the City of Columbia, Matthew Liu, to discuss the Columbia use tax. And then we will hear from Janet Thompson, Boone County Commissioner, to discuss the Boone County use tax.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to come speak with you today. So I wanted to just talk to everyone a little bit about what a use tax is. A use tax is a tax similar to a sales tax, but on goods that are purchased from outside of Columbia and bought for use within Columbia. The biggest portion of a use tax is the online sales tax portion of it. A good example that we've been using to kind of explain why use tax is important is your sales taxes pay for police, fire, streets, your health department, and other essential city services. So when you purchase something online and you're not paying that tax for those services, those online vendors, something like Amazon, for instance, will ship the package to your house using our roads. And it gets to your house and say someone stole the package, the police would then investigate that. And those police services, again, were not funded through the tax. They should pay for those services. And so that's a good example of why this is important for the city and the county. I don't know, did you want to?
Yeah, so and you're speaking to a guy whose life is finance and and a person who was like Barb, a lawyer for a long time. And so I guess the first question for a lot of people is, well, what the heck is the difference between a sales tax and a use tax, right? And so when the US Supreme Court looked at originally how a sales tax could be implemented, they said, here's how it works. For a jurisdiction to impose a sales tax, the seller had to have some kind of what they called nexus, some kind of relationship to that area. And the relationship, the nexus, was physical presence in the area. And I see some people about my age, some people a lot younger. But for me, when I was a kid, all of the sales that I engaged in, that my family engaged in, were local. The most far-reaching thing that happened in our family was when I did my Christmas wish shopping, and that was in the Sears and Roebuck catalog, right? And Sears was here, and so they had a local presence. So if my parents or Santa ended up shopping at Sears and Roebuck, they were paying sales tax. But the way we shop has changed in an extraordinary way over the past few years. And now, and what happens at League of Women Voters stays at League of Women Voters, okay? So how many people here will acknowledge that they've shopped online? Yeah, I mean, we all do, right? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We all do. And so when we started shopping online, that whole paradigm changed. And what Matthew was talking about in terms of, how we pay for those core services of government, that disappeared when we started shopping online. And even before the pandemic, the data was showing that, guess what? Over 50% of the sales in this country were happening through that remote kind of relationship. So there was no physical presence of Amazon. Jeff Bezos has no physical presence here. No physical presence, so we weren't able to capture any of that sales tax that pays for those core services, that pays for our roads, that pays for the public safety, that pays for all those things that are necessary components of local government. And when that happened, oh my goodness, revenue streams that paid for that were shrinking, right? So the US Supreme Court in 2018 issued an opinion that is commonly called the Wayfair opinion. It was South Dakota versus Wayfair. It was like, court, help us understand this. Help us come to a way that local government can sustain the services that we provide, because the mechanism of doing business has changed. And the US Supreme Court in the Wayfair decision said, yeah, it's okay. We can impose something that looks exactly like a sales tax, but we're calling it a use tax. And that use tax exactly mirrors the taxes that we as citizens here in Boone County, people in Columbia, have already authorized. So it's an exact mirror of that sales tax that will be, assuming Proposition 1 is passed, that will then be imposed on those remote sales. So the packet that you all have received, if you would, please, and because I believe chocolate is a major food group. I went out and I did a little exploration. I did a little, kind of an experiment. And I bought 3 Heath bars, because of chocolate, Heath bars are the best, right? And so I bought a Heath bar from 3 different break time stores here in Boone County. Because Proposition 1 for the city is on for the city of Columbia. Proposition 1 for the county is also on, and Proposition 1 is on in Ashland as well. Use tax is on for all 3 of those jurisdictions. So I brought this Heath bar in all 3 jurisdictions. And if you look at that last page, I bought one in rural Boone County, and the base price for all 3 of these purchases was $1.59. In rural Boone County, the sales tax on that $1.59 was 5 cents. And what that reflects is, first of all, the state sales tax, which is a 4.225%, and the county sales tax, which is 1.75%. So that's how you get to the 5 cents. Then I bought one, and there was method to my madness, yeah, because I got 3 Heath bars out of this. But but then I went to a break time in Columbia, and the tax associated with the $1.59 was 8 cents. So again, state sales tax, county sales tax, and city sales tax, and it's a 2.0, right?
That's correct.
2.0% on top of the county. So it's all 3 of those jurisdictions that have that sales tax. Ashland, a bit different because they have a 2.5% city sales tax in Ashland. So all 3 of those. And so think about that when you're buying something, and we've all done it, when we buy something from Amazon or some other place that has no physical presence here. It doesn't have to be candy bar, right? But what Proposition 1 will do for that purchase, that remote purchase, for if you're in the county of Boone, like I live out in the county. So a purchase that I make from Amazon will then have the 1.75% sales that would have been the sales tax had that happened locally. It will be applied to my purchase, my online purchase. If Matt makes that purchase here in the city of Columbia, it'll be the city sales tax and the county sales tax that would be applied. And so to his point, it's like we were talking during the superintendent's conversation about the bond issue. Everything's going up. The things that he does every day in his job of figuring out how to make ends meet, how to pay for all of the, you don't have gravel roads, we do. But all of the roads, all the paved roads, that's risen astronomically.
That is true. Materials costs have risen in most of the things that we purchase, 50 to 100% over the last 6 months.
And yeah, and motor graders, I remember I've been in this job now for 9 years. Motor graders have also doubled in cost over the last 9 years. So we have the same needs to provide services to the people of Columbia, to the people of the county, but yet we have less to work with because both of our budgets are built primarily on sales tax. And the same, the same kinds of pinches that we all feel because of rising costs, that's happening to our ability to provide the same service that we know that our constituents expect.
And to piggyback off that just a little bit, one question that is always asked is this a tax on a tax? And that's illegal for municipality or county to do. These are 2 separate issues. You will never pay a sales tax and a use tax. If you're paying a use tax, it's probably because you're buying something online or you're purchasing something somewhere and it's being delivered. If you're paying a sales tax, you're buying it from your local brick and mortar stores.
You know, and that makes me think, you know, and I know, I've lived here for a really long time, and as some of you know, I'm horse affected. Right, it's a disease. And so I remember going to a saddlery shop here in Boone County several years ago. And when I was in this, I was making my purchases, and there was a group of people that came in while I was doing my shopping. And they were using the services of the person that was there, the shop assistant. And they tried out probably 10 to 15 saddles in the time that I was there. And, you know, got a lot of feedback from the person. As they left the store, they weren't even out the door. They pulled out their phone and ordered it online.
Happens all the time. yeah.
And that saddlery no longer exists here in Boone County.
Why haven't we done this sooner is all I can. think.
Well, and, you know, when we were looking at this as a committee, we started looking around. Every single county contiguous to Boone has already enacted it.
Yeah.
Sturgeon here in Boone County has already enacted it. We want to catch up.
Yeah, good thing.
You know, this is so important, and it really, neither one of us are in the business community, but we see our friends and colleagues who are in the business community, whose businesses are suffering. You know, Boone County Lumber, Mid-City Lumber, those folks can't even bid on a lot of the construction projects that are happening every day, all the time in our community. So, you know, it's so important for us to help those businesses be able to survive.
Thank you very much. I know when I was on council, now long ago, 2006 to 2015, we were talking about the need for a use tax then. And I know everyone raised their hands that they purchased online. But I know personally, for me, I'd be happy to pay the sales tax. I just sometimes like the convenience, especially in the COVID times of ordering online. And so I guess we could just write a check out to the city, but we're less likely to do that.
That's correct.
And you know, it just, this really levels the playing field for those local businesses. It gives them the opportunity to compete. And it also, you know, it's the local businesses that, for those of you, and I know a lot of people here were interested in the school issues because they have kids. If you have kids or grandkids, your kids are going to those local businesses to ask for their support. They're the ones that are supporting their athletic programs. They're the ones that are supporting all of the stuff that's happening in our community. So, you know, it's time we as citizens give back and maintain those businesses here in Boone County.
I assume there's no questions because no cards have come up.
Excuse me, I
yes.
just have a question for information. Does Amazon or all the stores that do internet sales, do they have to agree and then they collect it and send it, or how does that work?
And I'll have to repeat the question. Yeah,
It's okay. It's okay.
the question was, does Amazon have, tell me it again?
Is there some kind of agreement that we make with all of the companies that serve us through the internet, where they will collect the money and send it to Columbia?
Oh, okay, the person asked, isn't there an agreement between Amazon and other companies that they will just automatically collect tax and send it to the city?
Yes, so the state has built a database of tax rates for all the municipalities and counties within the state. So it's pretty much like the flip of a switch. If this is done, those businesses have, I believe, until the next quarter, the beginning of the next quarter, to figure out how they get that money to places like Amazon. That it would be no issue. They already know the tax rates of the municipalities and counties.
And it's the Department of Revenue that's building that database. That's part of the legislation. that's now in place, that was finally authorized this last year. So when you start thinking about that, there's another piece to it that really actually makes a lot of sense. The businesses, the little mom and pop businesses that are, doing a little bit of selling of crocheted items or whatever, they're not subject to this legislation because the legislature said, that's such a small percentage of the traffic, that's not who they're going after. So those folks that are doing those really little businesses that have a very small economic footprint, they're not going to be subject to this. It is the Amazons of the world. It's those bigger companies, and the database, as Matthew said, the database will be very robust. It will be able to tell the difference between my address, because that's the point of sale is my address. And so since I live in rural Boone County, my purchases will be taxed at the county rate, right? So it'll be my address that will be the determining factor for that sale.
So I do have a question from, I think, someone on Zoom. Does the state also have a use tax?
Yes, the state has been collecting the use tax on goods sold within the state of Missouri. So this is something that they put on the municipalities. There's something called the Hancock Amendment that municipalities and counties have to go for a vote of the public if we do anything that's deemed increase.
So you might want to explain to this person that has this question, why this doesn't mean there's a double tax. If there's a state tax and a county tax, or a state tax and a city tax.
Because each jurisdiction has their own taxing rate. So a sales tax is built of a state tax, a county tax, and then if you're in a city tax. So that's what makes up your sales tax. Our sales tax here is 7.95, I believe, and there's a 4% state, a 1.75% county, and then a 2% city sales tax. And so that's what makes your sales tax.
So for that person online, think about the Heath bar. There's a different tax rate for if you go around and you buy that Heath bar at all of these different break times, right? And so, but each one has that state sales tax that's already being collected. And that is, if you've made an Amazon purchase, go look at your receipt. You'll see some sales tax because Amazon has already made that deal with the state of Missouri. So you'll see some sales tax that's already been collected from your Amazon receipt. But as Matthew said, that's just for the state sales tax, that 4.225%, that's the state sales tax. And so what the legislature authorized us to do was come to the voters and say, will you also approve the collection of the county sales tax and the city sales tax so that we can, again, provide those local services and continue that level of service that we believe the people of Boone County and Columbia deserve.
This is a question that may not exactly be related. Has the city or county received grant dollars from the federal government with pandemic funds? Is that?
The county and the city both received CARES Act funding and ARPA funding.
And I don't know, but that's not directly related to
No,
use
No,
tax.
no.
But maybe the questioner is just wondering what other sources of money the city and the county
Well,
are getting.
And so one of the things to consider with both CARES Act funding and ARPA funding, that's a one-time shot in the arm. And while it's wonderful, and especially the ARPA funding, the directive from Congress was to make transformative change, which I think, from everything I've heard, the city is certainly looking at transformative change with ARPA. that's not something that it is good policy or just plain smart to build, for instance, our obligation to pay personnel. Because if it's one-time money and you are adding personnel, then how are you going to continue to pay them when that one-time money is gone? So that's why it's important to look at something like the use tax, to continue to, to expand, law enforcement. That public safety component is a huge issue for both the city and the county. And the training that they require to be, to make those good decisions on the streets of Columbia, on the roads and streets in Boone County. That's hugely important, but we cannot hire them and then say, oops, money's gone.
Thank you. There's another question. Do we have to keep track of it ourselves, or is it automatically done?
No, this is something that is automatically added. This is not something you would have to keep track of.
That would be a really, really bad idea.
May make a difference
Yeah.
on whether they will vote for it.
Yeah, and that's the great part about the Department of Revenue website, and you can go on there and look at it. They are building that database and adding vendors to that database so that it really is based on where you live, and they'll be able to track that and say, yeah, Janet, you're gonna be paying the county rate. Matthew gets to pay a little bit more when he makes that call.
So, another thing to kind of point out is that on this ballot, if you live in the city of Columbia or in the city of Ashland, there will be two times you would have to vote. You would have to vote for the county proposition and for the city proposition.
Yeah. And so, when you look at your ballot, actually the first thing you'll see on the ballot is from the county. So don't stop there. Right? Keep working your way down the ballot. Yeah, keep working your way down the ballot to make sure you've looked at all of the issues and made your decision on Proposition 1 for both jurisdictions, if you live in either, as Matt said, either in Columbia or Ashland.
Well, thank you very much, Janet Thompson, Boone County Commissioner, and Matt Liu, City of Columbia Finance Director, for answering the questions and making this clearer to everyone.
Thank you.
And I want to thank KFRU and KOPN Radio for airing this forum tonight. And thank Lauren Williams and the Columbia Public Library again for co-hosting, and Carol Schreiber again for putting this event together. And I want to let people know that the league will have another forum on Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday, March 23rd. And that will be for the mayor's race and the city council race. And that will be 6:30 here in the library again in the Friends Room and on Zoom. And you should register if you want to do either one. Can't do both. And I also wanted to announce that the League of Women Voters is producing a digital voter guide, and we plan to have that available on our website, lwvcbc.org by March 18th. So please vote on April 5th and have a good evening and a good week.
Thank you.